The power of silence in our Christian journey. In our fast-paced world where everyone has an opinion and the constant noise of social media and daily conversations fills our minds, silence has become a rare and undervalued practice. Yet, the Bible teaches us that silence is not only a sign of wisdom, but also a spiritual discipline that can lead us closer to God. In Ecclesiastes 3:7, we are reminded that there is a time to be silent and a time to speak. This simple yet profound teaching offers us guidance in various aspects of life, showing us that silence can protect us from making mistakes, hurting others, or even damaging our relationship with God. The ability to remain silent, particularly in moments of emotional intensity or when faced with uncertainty, is not an easy task. It requires self-control, discernment, and trust in God's timing. Silence is not about avoiding confrontation or shirking responsibility, but about choosing when it is wise to withhold words, allowing space for reflection, peace, or even divine intervention. Today, we will explore 3 critical situations where the Bible advises us to stay silent, moments when our words could lead to harm, or when silence could pave the way for greater wisdom, peace, and spiritual growth. By the end of this reflection, you will better understand how silence can be a powerful tool for navigating life's challenges in a way that honors God. 1. When receiving a prophetic word, the silence of faith and obedience. The first situation where the Bible encourages silence is when we receive a prophetic word. Often, when we hear a prophetic message, especially if it seems incredible or beyond what we can understand, our natural reaction may be to question it, doubt it, or even speak words of disbelief. But the Bible warns us of the dangers of speaking too soon or speaking out of disbelief when we are faced with God's promises. Zechariah, the father of John the Baptist, is a prime example of this. In Luke 1:11-20, we read the story of how the angel Gabriel appeared to Zechariah while he was performing his priestly duties in the temple, announcing that his wife, Elizabeth, would bear a son despite their old age. Zechariah, rather than responding with faith, questioned the possibility of such a miracle. He asked the angel, "How can I be sure of this? I'm an old man, and my wife is well along in years." Luke 1:18. This moment of doubt led to a significant consequence. The angel struck Zechariah mute for the entire duration of Elizabeth's pregnancy. He remained silent for 9 months until the birth of his son, John. This period of silence was not just a punishment, it was a time of reflection and learning for Zechariah. When he finally regained his speech, the first thing he did was praise God. Luke 1:64. This story illustrates the importance of guarding our words when God speaks, particularly through prophecy. Doubtful words or negative reactions can hinder the work that God is trying to do in our lives. When we receive a word from God that seems too grand, too miraculous, or too far beyond our understanding, it's better to remain silent and meditate on that word in our hearts, trusting in God's ability to bring it to pass. Silence in this case becomes a sign of faith. Rather than questioning or dismissing the prophetic word, we demonstrate our trust in God's timing and His ability to fulfill His promises in ways we may not yet understand. Like Zechariah, we can use periods of silence to reflect, grow in faith, and prepare ourselves for the fulfillment of God's plans. Another example of this can be found in the story of Mary, the mother of Jesus. When the angel Gabriel came to her, announcing that she would give birth to the Son of God, her response was one of humility and quiet submission. Mary did not speak in doubt or fear. Instead, she pondered these things in her heart. Luke 2:19. Her silence reflected a deep trust in God's plan, even though she could not fully understand what was happening. In moments like these, silence is an expression of faith, showing that we are willing to wait on God's timing and trust in His wisdom, even when the situation seems impossible. In both Zechariah's and Mary's stories, we see that our words have the power to align us with or against God's promises. While Zechariah's initial response was one of doubt,
His eventual silence allowed him to witness the miracle of his son's birth and to speak words of praise at the right time. Similarly, Mary's quiet acceptance of God's plan positioned her to be part of the greatest miracle in history. In moments when God speaks a word over our lives, let us learn to hold our tongues, ponder His promises, and trust that His ways are higher than ours.
2. When you're angry. The importance of silence in moments of anger. The second situation where silence is crucial is during moments of anger or frustration. The Bible has much to say about the dangers of speaking out of anger, and it often encourages us to hold our tongues when emotions run high. Proverbs 17:28 gives us a powerful reminder. Even fools are thought wise if they keep silent, and discerning if they hold their tongues. Anger is a natural human emotion, but when it controls our speech, it can lead to destructive consequences. Words spoken in anger are often regretted later, and the damage they cause can be lasting, affecting relationships, reputations, and even our own peace of mind. James 1:19-20 instructs us to be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry, because human anger does not produce the righteousness that God desires. This verse highlights the importance of slowing down and exercising self-control when we are angry. The wisdom in silence during these moments is not about suppressing our feelings, but about allowing space for the Holy Spirit to guide our responses. When we speak impulsively in anger, we often say things that we don't mean, things that can hurt others or stir up more conflict. Silence, on the other hand, gives us time to calm down, reflect, and respond with grace rather than hostility. A practical example of this can be seen in family dynamics or workplace environments. Let's imagine you are having a heated argument with a family member or colleague. Your emotions are boiling over, and you feel justified in lashing out verbally. But Proverbs 15:1 reminds us that a gentle answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger. Choosing silence in that moment could prevent the situation from escalating and causing more harm. When we remain silent, we give ourselves the opportunity to pray, seek God's guidance, and respond in a way that fosters reconciliation rather than division. The power of silence in anger is also tied to the concept of humility. When we choose not to speak in moments of anger, we are essentially surrendering our desire to be right or to win the argument. This act of humility is deeply connected to our Christian faith, which calls us to follow the example of Christ, who even when he was unjustly accused and mistreated, remained silent before his accusers. Isaiah 53:7. Jesus' silence was not a sign of weakness, but a demonstration of his strength and trust in God's ultimate justice. In our own lives, choosing silence in moments of anger can be a way to reflect Christ's character, showing restraint and grace instead of reacting impulsively. Additionally, silence in anger allows us to protect our relationships. Whether it's with a spouse, a friend, or a co-worker, angry words can cause deep wounds that may take a long time to heal. By choosing silence, we give ourselves the chance to cool down, reflect on our emotions, and approach the situation with a heart of forgiveness and reconciliation. In many cases, what might have escalated into a major conflict can be diffused simply by holding our tongues and allowing time for tempers to subside. Silence, therefore, is a powerful tool for preserving peace and unity in our relationships, preventing the kind of damage that rash words can inflict. In summary, the Bible teaches us that silence in moments of anger is an act of wisdom and self-control. It allows us to avoid unnecessary conflict, protect our relationships, and reflect the character of Christ in our responses. The next time you find yourself in a heated situation, remember the power of silence and ask God to help you hold your tongue until you can speak with grace and love. 3. When making promises, the weight of our words and the call for caution. The third situation where the Bible encourages silence is when we are about to make promises or commitments. Words carry weight, and the Bible warns us repeatedly about the importance of thinking before we speak, particularly when making vows or promises. In Ecclesiastes 5:2-3, we are reminded, "Do not be quick with your mouth, do not be hasty in your heart to utter anything before God. God is in heaven and you are on earth, so let your words be few." A dream comes when there are many cares, and many words mark the speech of a fool. This passage highlights the danger of speaking hastily, especially when we are emotional or excited. In today's society, promises are often made lightly. We promise to help a friend, to commit to a project, or to make changes in our personal lives, sometimes without fully considering the effort or time required to fulfill these commitments. The Bible, however, places great emphasis on the integrity of our words. Matthew 5:37 echoes this sentiment when Jesus says, "Let your yes be yes, and your no, no. Anything beyond this comes from the evil one." This instruction emphasizes that our words should be truthful and reliable, not spoken out of emotion or to appease others temporarily. When we make promises without fully considering them, we risk damaging our credibility and integrity, especially if we fail to follow through. One biblical example that highlights the importance of being careful with our words is found in Judges 11 in the story of Jephthah. Jephthah, a judge of Israel, made a rash vow to God before going into battle. He promised that if God granted him victory, he would offer as a burnt offering whatever came out of his house to greet him. Unfortunately, after his victory, it was his daughter, his only child, who came out to greet him. Jephthah's hasty vow led to devastating consequences, showing us the gravity of making promises without careful thought and reflection. Before making any commitment, whether to God or to others, we must take the time to consider our ability to fulfill that promise. Silence, in this case, is an act of wisdom. It allows us to pause, reflect, and seek God's guidance before we speak. Promises made in haste often lead to regret or failure, but silence gives us the opportunity to weigh our words carefully, ensuring that when we do speak, our commitments are genuine and attainable. Additionally, when we are silent, we give ourselves space to pray and ask for wisdom, allowing God to direct our decisions and guide our speech. Furthermore, silence before making a promise also protects our relationships. When we overcommit or make promises we cannot keep, we risk damaging our trust with others. People will judge our character based on our ability to follow through on our word. If we are constantly making promises that we fail to keep, others may begin to doubt our integrity, which can harm our relationships and even our witness as Christians. Proverbs 18:21 tells us that the tongue has the power of life and death, and this is especially true when it comes to the promises we make. Our words have the power to build trust and credibility, or to tear it down, depending on how carefully we speak. In conclusion, the Bible teaches us that silence before making promises is a mark of wisdom and humility. By pausing to reflect, seek God's guidance, and carefully consider our commitments, we can ensure that our words are reliable and that our actions align with what we have spoken. Let us be mindful of the power of our words, choosing silence when necessary to protect our integrity and honor God with our speech. The wisdom of silence in key moments of life. Silence, far from being a sign of weakness, is often a demonstration of wisdom and strength. Ecclesiastes 3:7 reminds us that there is a time to be silent and a time to speak, and through the examples we've explored today, we can see how silence can protect us from making mistakes, harming our relationships, or falling into sin. Whether it's in moments of receiving a prophetic word, controlling our tongues in anger, or guarding our words before making a promise, silence can be a powerful tool for spiritual growth and self-discipline. By choosing silence in these key moments, we allow God to work in our hearts, guiding us to respond with wisdom and grace rather than impulsivity or emotion. Silence helps us reflect, trust in God's timing, and avoid the traps that careless words can create. As you move forward in your journey of faith, consider the areas in your life where silence might be more beneficial than speaking. How can you use moments of silence to draw closer to God, protect your relationships, and live in alignment with His will.